Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Friday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, thanks for making us a part of your day. We're also streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, and on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can see us here on the show on this Friday. So much to get to here from Chris Burnett, former All-SEC offensive lineman from Georgia. Gerald Anderson, former SEC champion defensive tackle, two-time SEC champion there at Georgia, out of Ware County High School. He will join us. We'll talk about Georgia and Alabama with him. We'll also talk with Adam Witten, voice of the Appalachian State Mountaineers, the Sun Belt Championship this weekend. It is App State and Louisiana. Of course, Louisiana with Billy Napier heading to Florida coming up as well. We'll also get our picks, surely to go wrong, as we get to Conference Championship weekend and more. But, fellas, we are here. It's Friday. Good to be here, and conference championships this weekend. Certainly the SEC's got two teams in the top four right now playing against one another. What, as you see it, as we're 24 hours and 56 minutes away from the SEC championship game, what is the most important factor as you see it tomorrow afternoon?
Can't wait. Really looking forward to the game. I think it's going to come down to the final couple of drives. For me, when I think about anybody, even Alabama, beating Georgia, you're going to have to do it with a couple of big plays. And I don't mean, a 15-yard out. I mean some home run, highlight reel, chunk plays. Georgia right now has allowed the fewest big plays in college football. And by big plays, I mean plays of 20 yards or more. The fewest in the country with just 24. The number 2 team in the nation in that regard is Cincinnati, and they've allowed 33. So as that stat shows you, Georgia has been absolutely elite at preventing big plays. Now, with all due respect to Bryce Young and that Alabama offense, I have a hard time envisioning a scenario where Alabama has 4 or 5 drives where they're moving the football 8, 10, 12 plays, because nobody's done that. This Georgia defense is a generational group, maybe the best modern college defense we've ever seen. So I don't think you're going to have a normal Alabama performance where you have 600 yards of total offense, 550, and you're moving up and down the field. I think you're going to have to do it with big plays. You're going to have to take a risk, and you're going to have to convert, hit the home run a couple of times. If you go down swinging, you go down swinging. But I think you're going to have to try to hit the home run, and I think Jameson Williams is the key. John Mechie as well, who already has a national championship. Jameson Williams, the Ohio State transfer, he is tied for the Power 5 lead in catches of 30 yards or more. So I think he's the guy to watch. If I'm Bryce Young, I'm getting it to Mechie, I'm getting it to Williams, but I'm doing it deep downfield. I think if you try to beat Georgia with a short to intermediate passing game, that's not going to go well. And I don't even think Alabama is going to be able to run on Georgia. So the question that determines this game for me is, will Alabama be able to convert big plays against Georgia? And you think about it. If you can get 2 or 3 of them, that may be enough for 14 or 17 or 20 or 21 points. And that may be enough to win. So, Ben, I think if you're Alabama, you've got to get some big plays. If you're Georgia, you can't give them up.
If you're Alabama, you got to be able to hold up so you can give Bryce Young a chance to get the ball downfield, BJ, to make some of those big plays. If you're Alabama's defense, you got to force some turnovers. Go back to 2020 when Stetson Bennett was playing Alabama. Played really well in the first half. How did he look the second half? Alabama gonna have to make some big time halftime adjustments. And number 3, you're gonna have to, and this is imperative. If you're Alabama, you're gonna have to stay patient. See, when you're going up against a Georgia defense like you've never seen, they don't give up a lot. Every defense has a hole. Every defense has a weakness. But if you're trying to throw in the passing lanes that aren't there, pick. If you're trying to do things that aren't there, you're going to find yourself turning the football over. So if you are Alabama, force that Georgia offense some turnovers, great second half adjustments, and be patient and you got to find a way to score every quarter. 3 points, 7 points. Try to get a pick, because the thing about the Georgia team, Kevin, something we talk about, we look up, they won 31-0. Yes, because the other team 3 and out. Didn't stay on the field. So for me, I think when it comes to Alabama, be yourself, force some turnover to that Georgia offense, second half adjustments, find a way to score, and be patient. I know that's a lot, but Georgia's defense, Kevin, I haven't seen the defense. They don't give up anything. They're giving up, less than 90 points all season. Less than 90. You know who's number 2? I think it's Clemson. Well, they only gave up 3 to them. So I just think at the end of the day, be patient. Take what the defense gives you if you are the Alabama offense. Force some turnovers, you're the Alabama defense on that Georgia offense. And at the end of the day, if you can do those things, because running the football, BJ, good luck with that. I think they're going to have to find a way to beat them through there.
I think the biggest factor to me is Alabama has, and kind of speaks to what Ben was getting at, you've got to put pressure on Georgia's offense to make a play. When you are on offense and your defense gives up less than a touchdown per game, they've not really felt that pressure. I know people will go back and say, oh, Tennessee gave them a game. Well, I mean, kind of for a little bit. Has Georgia taken those snaps on offense under pressure, need a first down, need a touchdown, need a field goal to finish? I think that's the strategy for Alabama is you've got to get Georgia behind, make them play from behind, and say, because I think, BJ, in the stat, also, like, Georgia's only been behind like a few seconds. Like they were behind to Tennessee early and came right back down and tied it up. So it's like maybe a couple of minutes. They've been behind the entirety of the season. Have them play from behind. How do they respond in a big game from behind? Do they need to go out and put a touchdown on the board? We haven't seen them have to do that. And people say, well, they do it anyway. Yeah, I'm sorry. Ben, you know this. Big difference in we're up 14-7 and we go down and put a touchdown on the board, or we're up 21-3 and it's like, hey, let's go down and get a score. All right, versus, hey, we're down 21-14. We have to get a touchdown. Let's go make a play. I just think they haven't been in that situation. And I think if you're Alabama, how do you win big games like that? You put another team in an uncomfortable spot. And the only uncomfortable spot that Georgia could possibly be in right now is they are down and need to make an offensive play. Right? That's it. What other position has Georgia not found themselves in this year? Hey, we need to dominate on defense. Well, they've done that every single week. We need to get turnovers. Done that. Did that against Clemson. We're able to get a score, even their offense struggle. I just don't think we've seen a team. Maybe you could say that Clemson game in week 1, but we haven't really seen Georgia where it's like, if you do not score right now, the tide of the ball game, and bad analogy, the tenor of the ball game may change. And I don't think we've seen, and I say that not because I don't think Georgia's going to win. I say that because if I'm Nick Saban, I'm looking at that as that's the strategy. Put Georgia in an uncomfortable spot, and the only one they haven't been in is playing from behind. So I think to me that will be key for Alabama, is to get ahead of Georgia and make Georgia play catch up early and see how that team responds. It also gives your team a little confidence there if you're Nick Saban, if you can get a lead early. But I think if you're playing catch up all day on that Georgia team, you're in a bad way.
No, I think you're right. And any game is about who can dictate tempo, right? Even if you want to do similar things, who controls the ebb and flow of the game? And to your point, as dominant as Georgia's been, if there's a relative downside in that, it's that Georgia has not had many moments, if any. I mean, you can go back to the Clemson game, but Clemson had 180 total yards in that game. Georgia has not been in a contest where they've had to rally, where they've had to respond, they've had to answer. And of course they can. This is an incredibly talented, composed, well-coached, great football team, but they still haven't been in that spot. And that's why another key, I mentioned it a couple of days ago, I think the first couple of drives are going to be really important, because right now Georgia's been able to play with the understanding, offensively, defensively, coaching decisions, with the understanding that nobody's doing anything. Maybe we give up a field goal. Maybe, if it gets really weird, we give up a touchdown. Well, what happens if Alabama maybe gets a field goal on their first drive, a touchdown on their second drive, and you're looking around and it's 10-0 or it's 10-3? That's a different environment. Doesn't mean Georgia won't succeed in that environment. But like you said, Kevin, your only goal when you play the number one team in the country is to get them in a spot where they haven't been. Try to get them out of their comfort zone. And I think that's why I go to the big plays. Can you get, a receiver open down the seam? Can you get Mechie or Williams the ball in space? They make a guy or two miss, they're off to the races. Can you run don't be surprised if Bama tries a trick play or something early. I think you're right. We're all kind of saying the same thing in different ways. You've got to find a way to put the pressure on Georgia.
BJ, I mean, it comes down to, BJ, what you do every week. You got to win the box score. What am I talking about? You got to win the time of possession if you're Alabama. Then you got to win the turnover. You got to win the turnover battle if you're Alabama. And this is most important. You got to win the possession battle. How many possessions did you have? How successful were you with them with possessions? And number 4, most importantly, sustained drive. Sometimes just keeping that Georgia defense on the field longer than they used to being on the field is a win. Because the biggest thing Alabama got to do, BJ, is prove to themselves we can move the ball against these guys. Because the same way Alabama gets better as the second half, so does Georgia. Because now I know what they want to do. So time of possession, turnover battle, win the possession, and you got to have sustained drives. That will give you a shot to even have, success in this game. And if Stetson is who Georgia knows he is, they got to go out there and put pressure on him, Kevin, to hopefully throw the football to the other team or turn the football over because Alabama's going to need a couple extra possessions for that offense to potentially try to put some points on the board.
Yeah, and again, BJ, I think that is the whole way. If Georgia plays the way they have all season, you talk about a lot of times we hear this in politics. What's the path to victory? The way Alabama has played the last half of the season offensively against the number 1 defense in the country, if that goes out and maintains the status quo and that doesn't change, Georgia will win the ball game. Now it might be 14-3 or 14-7, but Georgia will win because I think Alabama's defense is pretty good. Also, we're
number 7 in the country.
We're kind of cutting that short a little bit, so I do think it could be a low scoring game. But if Alabama doesn't create something that like turns the flow of the ball game, they're not going to. I don't think they're going to win. That's an odd thing to say about Alabama, but this Georgia team's very good. And again, I think the way in a championship game to win is you got to make them uncomfortable. And right now, the only way to make them uncomfortable is put them behind, and because we have not seen it at all, but for a few minutes against Tennessee that they've had to play from behind the entirety of the season. So to me, that sounds overly simplistic as I'm saying it, but I think that is the quote path to victory for Alabama.
Look, it may not work. I mean, Georgia has great defense.
Because Georgia, I think, it should be a favorite, and they are. I mean,
right. Darion Kendrick's been spectacular. Has been one of the best corners in the country this year. But I think if you're Alabama, you have to be aggressive. If you come out and you're running again tight end drags, and I hate to say it because normally I'm a big fan of running the football, but you're trying to establish the run first, I think you're going to have a real problem. You have 2 of the best receivers in the country, including maybe the best this year in Jamison Williams and John Mechie. You have got to throw the ball downfield. And I know, generally speaking, Ben, there's not a high proficiency rate with balls thrown over 20 yards, but I think that's your, to quote Kevin, the path to victory that you have to follow.
You got to outdo them at what they do. Georgia hits hard, you got to hit harder. Georgia runs fast, you got to run faster. Georgia dominates, you got to be more dominated. Because sometimes we forget Alabama's not used to being the team not being talked about. Hey, man, wait, we do this too, right, Coach? Yes. Georgia's undefeated this year. We went undefeated, and with the last intent of last year, we've lost 1 game by 3 points in 2 calendar years. Alabama, BJ and Kevin, something y'all said, if Alabama plays their best and Georgia plays their best, that favors Alabama. You know why? Alabama has a better offense. We'll see what happens, Kevin, but this is why we talk about the game. The game will be played. We'll see what happens.
We're going to have a lot of fun waiting and seeing what happens there. We'll talk with a couple former Georgia Bulldogs. Gerald Anderson, former Ware County Gator, 2-time SEC champion defensive tackle, will join us in about 20 minutes. When we come back, we'll hear from Chris Burnett, all SEC offensive lineman there at Georgia, and we'll talk about that offense for Georgia and what they need to do here on Saturday. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. which has been kind of that mountain in the way?
That's a great point. I think that we are, those guys are probably very confident, but I think they are also very prepared. I think there's a difference between going into a game confident and cocky. I believe that Kirby has created an environment along with those seniors there where they know you cannot take any matchup for granted, let alone one that is a matchup against a team led by the greatest coach of all time. So I think they're confident. You know, they've come into every single week and they've shown themselves to be an elite team, a team that is well disciplined and well coached and plays well together. And I think they're probably going into this like this is another Saturday. Let's do what we do. And we know we're going to take some punches, but all year long they've taken those punches and thrown out plenty of their own. So it'll be exciting to see. It's definitely a heavyweight bout, and it'll be great to see Georgia finish out the season strong within the conference with a win over the Crimson Tide. At least that's what we're hoping for.
Chris, Alabama has a defensive player that's getting Heisman Trophy attention, Will Anderson, who has 14 and a half sacks and almost 30 tackles for loss. As an offensive line collectively, even though he's an edge rusher, how do you prepare for a player like that?
Yeah, no, Will Anderson is the type of player that you have to scheme and game plan around. And I think if we were to compare him and his impact and what he brings to the table to a player that we played against, I'd probably have to say someone like a Jadeveon Clowney, who can just completely wreck and destroy anything that you're doing on the offensive side of the ball. And you have to game plan specifically for him, whether you're an interior lineman, you're the quarterback, you're a running back, like you have to kind of scheme accordingly. So one thing that I wouldn't be surprised to see us do is do full line slides, you know, in whatever direction that Will is on. To have the running backs get involved, the tight ends get involved, whether it be chips, you know, giving the tackles a little bit of extra help and allow them to get a little bit more comfortable. And to be quite honest, there'll probably be a lot of those kind of quick reads, three-step drop plays that happen that usually tries to negate some of the quickness and the get off and the ability to rush the passer that guy that can bring. So the thing I'd be looking forward to or looking to see is if we can stay out of those third and long, you know, second and long type of circumstances or situations, I think we'll be able to not, you know, negate or thwart him, but I think we'll hopefully be able to keep him at bay long enough to make the plays we need to offensively.
Individual battles, as well as like playing with, you know, consistency on the offensive line is something you had to do, Chris, from your time at Georgia. How much is this we talk so much about, you know, the Will Andersons, the Jordan Davises, all these big name players, and we come out of this game talking about those five guys in front of Stetson who just took the game over.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Ben. Like, it's so crazy how I think when you go into a game, you think about the big names, but everyone knows, at least people who know the game well, know that the game is won in the trenches. It's won and lost in the trenches. So you'd hope that, like you said, those guys go into it as a collective and say, hey, we're going to work together as a squad to take on some of those big names and do the best we can to reduce the impact that they make. But like you said, it really boils down to the one-on-one matchup, man. Football is the greatest team sport known to man, in my opinion, because everybody has to do their job in order to be successful. But it's also a compilation of a bunch of one-on-one mini fights that happen 70, 80, 90 times a game. And you have to just be ready for your one-on-one matchup. So, you know, wherever they have Will lining up, whether it be on the left or the right side, I'd hope that tackle is prepared and ready. And I feel like they will be. They'll be willing and ready to take on that challenge. Because like you said, when those guys in the trenches do their thing, those five come together the way they need to, it can win or lose a game for sure.
Chris Burnett joining us here on 3 and Out. And Chris, when you have Ben talks a lot on this show about complementary football, when you have a defense that's played like Georgia's had, how kind of relaxed are you as an offense where you go and say, look, we don't need to rush things, we don't need to force things, don't need to do certain things because our time will come and our defense is not going to allow much of anything?
That's a great point. It definitely makes you have a different mindset. I don't know if relax would be the best descriptor because I don't
Sure.
think I ever went into a game relaxed, if I'm quite honest with you. But I do think that it gives you a sense of perspective with your decision making, especially if you're in those kind of heavyweight battles where you know, hey, whoever makes the least amount of mistakes is probably going to be the one to come out on top because you have those evenly matched teams and you have a defense who you know is going to take care of business. So sometimes you have to have a little bit of that healthy fear of like, man, we need to score now in order to give you some of that sense of urgency. But I believe that at this point, the defense has shown and proved that if a team, if our offense was able to put up 3 touchdowns, it'd be hard pressed to see somebody actually beat us in a game. And it definitely helps with your mindset, I think, to not press too hard. So more than anything, it probably doesn't allow anyone to feel relaxed, but it definitely helps them to not overly press when it comes to the decisions they make, being on top of their assignments and making sure that they can make quick but intentional and wise decisions. So it'd be interesting to see. I know Stetson, he's really done that the entire year, making really wise decisions regardless of what the circumstances are. And just excited to see those boys kind of bring it to them tomorrow afternoon. I really believe that they're going to show up and show out.
Chris, what has impressed you most about Stetson Bennett this season?
Yeah, honestly, it has just been his poise. I love the fact that he's a player who can not just make wise decisions and throw the ball where it needs to be thrown, but he can use his legs pretty well. And he's a guy who is kind of sneaky with his elusiveness. Like, I think that he's a quicker guy, but he's also really slippery when he gets out in the open field, and he knows how to use that well. But the thing that's really impressed me the most is that his leadership, the intangibles, his willingness to make those, quick and decisive decisions. Because I think if you have a quarterback under center who's able to do those things, regardless of whatever their, the arm strength or their personal stature may be, it can go a long way to garnering the rest of the team's trust that you're going to make the right plays at the end of the day. And, I saw it firsthand. Aaron Murray wasn't the biggest in stature when it came to quarterbacks, but when it came to just leadership, preparation, ability to make wise decisions, there was nobody I trusted more. And I feel like they probably have a similar respect for Stetson from this season and honestly from the previous season as well.
Chris, back in my time playing, man, I used to, the offensive line coaches always say, an offensive lineman is a gentleman with an attitude. He stares people in the eyes and he don't flinch. How much when you played, you understood the guy, he's right there in front of me. It's going to be me and him all game. I'm a gentleman, but I don't like that guy in front of me.
That's right. No, I love that. I've never heard that descriptor for an O-lineman, a gentleman with the attitude, but I think that's a perfect way to put it. And to be quite honest, I think you have to play with a bit of controlled rage. That was the way that my dad taught me when I was a young kid starting out in Pop Warner football, because I was always a lineman. I was always big. So I kind of had to develop that type of mindset or skill set very early on. And with that, you have to go into that like it's a fight. Not that you're trying to necessarily hurt somebody or do something to harm someone long term, but you have to take it personally in certain respects and say, like you said, I am coming in with an attitude that this person lined up in front of me shouldn't even be here, and I have to make some movement in order for us to really be successful. So I love that description, Ben. I'm going to have to keep that one in the lexicon moving forward.
Chris Burnett joining us here on 3 and Out. And Chris, finally, give us your thoughts. What do you think happens tomorrow? What's that final score look like? Where does Georgia stand when it's all said and done?
Yes. I think tomorrow is going to be a definite slugfest. I know that the sports book, the betting table has us favored by about 6 or 7 points or something like that. And I'd say we're probably somewhere in that range when the game ends. If I were to give a prediction, I believe that Georgia pulls it out, and wins 31-21 at the end of the day. It's kind of crazy to even say that because I know that there's been a lot of talk in the state of Georgia about curses and how the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia can't necessarily get over the hump in some of those big moments. But I think the Braves have served and shown us well that stuff doesn't matter, and the better team will come out and win. And I think these are the guys to make it happen.
Chris Burnett, our guest here on 3 and Out. Chris, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you both. I appreciate the time as always.
Appreciate it. Chris Burnett joining us here on 3 and Out. We'll come back with more all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.
fun game to watch tomorrow.
Gerald, for you, take us back to 2002, 2005, the night before, the Friday before the SEC championship game. What were your emotions like? What was your mindset? And how did you kind of maintain the excitement level but also stay calm the night before?
In 2002, it was very new for all of us. It was Coach Rick's first SEC championship game as a head coach, his first SEC championship game, period. But definitely as a head coach, all the players, we hadn't won an SEC champion in 20 years prior to that, or a little over right at 20 years. So it was new to everybody in the program, especially at Georgia. And there were a lot of butterflies. We had a theme that year going into the season with the Bible verse, John 3:16. And if you know much about, the state of Georgia and the route to get from Athens to Atlanta, you had to take Highway 316 to get there. So that was our theme all that year. And right there, we were headed to Atlanta to play Arkansas that year in the SEC championship game, and we had to take Route 316 to get there. So it kind of all came together. It was a fun time. It was a lot of jitters. I think once we got there and got in the groove of everything, the butterflies kind of got out. And at the end of the day, it was just another game, and that's kind of how we had to approach it.
And Gerald, when you think about tomorrow, obviously you talk about individual matchups. You got a guy like Jordan Davis who they're gonna run everything through him on that defense. What's the mindset for a guy like yourself, for which, Eamon, you got to win your individual matchup, but you got to be ready to make that play to kind of get off the field to give your offense another opportunity?
It's like the old saying is, big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games, and this is one of the ones. I mean, there's a lot of talk around Jordan Davis. It's a lot of talk around a lot of the guys on that team, not just on defense, but on offense as well. And now is the time that you got to make sure that you, number one, you're playing assignment football. You're doing the things that you were taught to do. You're being the leader that you have been made to be. You make sure you lead the troops. You keep everybody up. Even when there is a mistake, you overcome that adversity. And that's the biggest part of what a champion does is they're going to overcome the adversity. They're going to lead by example, and they're going to make sure that, along with themselves, but everybody else is doing their job, and you just keep that focus throughout the game for all 4 quarters.
Gerald Anderson joining us here on 3 and Out. And Gerald, you look at that defense going up against Alabama. This is a defense that has shut everybody down all season long. What's that approach? What's that mental aspect like going up against a team like Alabama, who's been good on offense, maybe not as elite as we've seen, but at the end of the day, it is Alabama on the other side. How much of that does it play into that?
It plays a tremendous factor. I mean, like you said, it is still Alabama. Alabama finds a way to win, even when, they're up against the wall. Just speaking of last week, they found a way to win. They found a way to beat Auburn. When you look at 3-4 quarters of the game, it didn't look like it was going to go that way. So you still know that this is Alabama. They're a well-coached football team. They have a long-standing tradition. They're going to come out and they're going to give you everything they got. You have to, as an opponent to Alabama, you have to be able to execute. You have to be able to try to play as much mistake-free football as you can, and just go out there and execute, do the things that you have been taught to do, the things that you've just done all season. You cannot lay an egg, as I would say, at this part of the season. This is not the time to do it. This is not the place. And if you do it, Alabama will make you pay for it.
A lot of playmakers on the field, obviously, but you look at these two defenses. Georgia's front seven, one of the best we've ever seen. Alabama's got a guy coming off the edge who already has 30 tackles for loss. For all the talk of the quarterbacks and the receivers, et cetera, is this a game that's going to be determined in your mind at the line of scrimmage?
Most definitely. And being a guy that played on line of scrimmage, every game, in my opinion, is one up front. You're only as good as your front guys are, defensive and offensive. So it's going to be a great test, a great battle. And I would almost guarantee you the team who has the most success up front, if Georgia has a lot of success on the ground, running the ball, as I think they can do, protecting that quarterback, and getting after it on defense, being able to control the run and getting after their quarterback, who's pretty dang good. If Georgia can control the game that way, Georgia could be successful. And if not, then it could go the other way around because Alabama's couldn't be just as successful doing the same thing that Georgia would need to do. So this is a game that definitely is going to be played up front, and it's going to be won up front. All the battles are won up front.
Gerald, what is this going to mean to Kirby Smart's legacy? Obviously, he's done it all, but win the national championship up until this point. But Georgia wins on Saturday. What is this going to mean for Kirby Smart's legacy and the confidence of this Georgia team moving forward?
I don't think it's going to do anything confidence level wise. I think this team is very confident. Win or lose, I think it's going to be a setback, but I believe this team is very much more confident and a lot better position than they have been in the last couple of years. But for Kirby's legacy, it will help put another stamp on his legacy. He's already written a great resume, a great legacy for what he's done at the University of Georgia in the time he's been there. But definitely to go against Alabama at a time like this, a guy that he's worked up under for so long, that he's learned from, and you hear about the student and the teacher, and this is kind of still that game until he actually overcomes that battle. And I think tomorrow's the day that we can actually knock the lid off the program, as we would say, and overcome that hurdle. And I think it is going to definitely put us at a whole nother class when we can do that. But like we said, we won SEC championships. We won in the playoffs. We played now in a national championship game, but the ultimate goal is holding up that trophy there in January after we won the national championship. So, but in order to get there, we have to take care of business tomorrow. So I really believe that's going to happen, and I really believe it's going to help continue to put that stamp on his legacy there at Georgia.
And Gerald, everything you just said is why I don't get the narrative. Sometimes we've heard this week of, well, it doesn't matter if Georgia wins on Saturday or not. They're still in the playoff. Everybody knows that they're in regardless, and they still have the ultimate prize out there to go win a national championship. I kind of disagree with that. This is a chance to, as you said, knock off Alabama, and they're out. Kick them out of the playoff picture, and then move forward and worry about your destiny there.
I definitely agree with you. And it's just taking it one game at a time. But this is a game that, people do say it, the fact that we went 12-0, that no matter what happens tomorrow, we're still in the playoffs. But I guarantee you that's not the way Georgia's thinking. That's definitely not the way I don't think Coach Smart is thinking as well. I know that this game means a lot to him for what's all at stake. And I know that it's definitely not a game to say, oh, we could just, whatever happens, happens. I mean, I believe after the game, if were to lose the game, they're going to worry about what to do next. But right now in this moment, it's all about we got to beat Bama. And that's going to be the ultimate goal. And we got to beat Bama for a lot more than just one reason.
You're from Waycross, obviously, Gerald. Stetson Bennett, of course, from right there in Blackshear. What's been your perspective on this incredible story? Him originally walking on, leaving, coming back, and now this season has been one of the most proficient quarterbacks in the country and has done that with the top-ranked team in the game.
It's been incredible for a guy like Stet, man, and being right there where I grew up, 10 miles away from where he grew up from, and he's had an unbelievable story, and watching him even last year when he came in, he played he had some struggles there at that position, and just the things, the adversity that he's overcame. I mean, most people in his position would have already walked away from the game, quit, or done something else, and he stuck right there through it, and he has been blessed to be in the position that he is in right now, and I know. Just a guy of that nature, he's soaking it up. He understands what he has to do, and he's going to go out and give it all he has. You can tell a guy like that, he's just not a football player. He loves what he's doing. He loves the University of Georgia. He loves the state of Georgia. And when you get a guy like that has that much passion and love, I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to go out there and continue to lead and put this team on his back. I mean, and I read an article the other day, man, the kid stands 5'11", and you just don't realize it because he plays so much bigger than that. And, and he really does. And it's just more than just, how strong is his arm or how well he can run. It's just the things that he does and what he brings to the game there's no knock on the guys that's behind him. There's no knock on JT Daniels, but this kid is just a whole nother dynamic to what he's doing right now that's unbelievable. And he continues to get better and better week in and week out. And I'm so happy for him. I can't wait to see, at the end of the season, what he has wrote for his legacy here. And it's just a proud moment for a kid like Stetson.
Georgia and Bama tomorrow, SEC championship game. Gerald Anderson, former Ware County Gator and Georgia Bulldog defensive lineman, two-time SEC champion there as well, joins us here on 3 and Out. Gerald, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Phil Collins getting us fired up. This is like every pregame anthem every Friday night before we do football. Christian Gokel starts the Phil Collins. I can feel it. He does.
Say that thing.
What's your second favorite Phil Collins song?
Does Phil Collins? Did he do "Lady in Red"? Was that Phil Collins? Did it? What?
I was asking you. I was curious.
Or is that Paul Simon? I don't know. You talking about Phil Collins, like Phil Collins? You talking about Phil Collins when he was with Genesis?
Come on.
Okay. Well, Kevin's the musical historian on the show.
No, not if you got to ride long distance and you got to go on a musical escapade where people try to, I don't know, control the radio.
And BJ violates all driving protocol ever involved.
No, I don't drive. I ride.
I know that's what I'm saying.
If you don't drive,
unless there's a steering wheel in front of you, you do not get control over the musical selection in the car.
We could be in Texas. It could be 2:00 in the morning, and BJ goes, "The game's over. Let's drive back. Let's go. I got some stories to do."
It's like parliamentary procedures. It's like unless the time is ceded to you to control the radio, you do not get control of the radio unless the steering wheel is in front of you.
And go ahead.
This has been a wide-ranging segment.
No,
parliamentary procedures.
Yeah, because when I have to drive that late with BJ, it's not driving, it's swerving. Because that's what I'll be doing. Because I can't make it. But somebody else will ask, "Do you good? Could you clap swerving so I can post a story?" I'm like this.
Yeah, your car makes internet. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, we're about to make an accident because it was about to be rough. Because I was struggling. That's what we're about to do.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take us down the sideways path. You came back and I was jamming out to
I didn't do any of that.
I know. I was doing it. You're like, what? You can't like Phil Collins?
We still haven't given me a second song yet.
Do I have to name the entire catalog? Not like one song that Phil Collins?
What is your second? Because you came back, we're like, oh, Phil Collins.
I'm sorry. Can we not like, can we not like one song somebody does? I don't know the entire Phil Collins catalog here on a Friday afternoon. Excuse me. We'll come back. I'll have to do some research apparently to make BJ happy. The entire soundtrack of Phil Collins when we come back at Take 3. It's 3 now on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio, streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. So much to get to here on this Friday. We'll hear from Adam Whitten, voice of Appalachian State Mountaineers, the Sun Belt Conference Championship game coming up this weekend. Brian Kelly is back in LSU and back with a new accent. We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit as well. We'll get to the best of Phil Collins. You'll Be in My Heart. What a great song. You'll be in my heart. That's a great song.
That's what I was thinking.
Oh, I love Phil Collins growing up. I asked BJ in the break. I said, is Phil short for something? BJ goes, Philip? I was like, you know what?
I mean, I don't know that for a fact. It was a guess. I mean, I didn't think it was short for Steven.
Said it with a little sarcasm.
Short for Robert. Phil Collins. We'll get to that obviously way later. Let's take 3 before we get way out of control here on a Friday here on 3 and Out. This is a playoff edition, take 3, by the way, fellas. We're going to run a little scenario game here. Take 1. Cincinnati and Oklahoma State both win. Alabama wins ahead of them. And everybody else, obviously, we know how that plays out. They will assume they win. Georgia would lose in that scenario. Who gets in that scenario with Cincinnati and Oklahoma State winning, Alabama winning, and obviously Georgia losing, but most people think even with a loss, they would still be in? What would you do?
I hate this scenario because I think in this scenario, Oklahoma State and Cincinnati would both be deserving. And I think you can make a logical, rational case for both teams being in. And I think the one left out would have a very reasonable argument to say, hey, we got disrespected here. I've gone back and forth. Even in the last 2 minutes in my head, I've gone back and forth. I think that I would lean Oklahoma State. And how do you compare a one-loss team that has a better resume probably week to week to an undefeated team that won all their games, of course, but also did everything they could? I mean, you scheduled Notre Dame and you scheduled Indiana. It's not Cincinnati's fault that Indiana was terrible. If you go back to the preseason, Indiana was a top 15 team. Indiana finished, I think they finished last in the Big Ten or one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. I just think, and Kevin, you talked about this, if you're looking at an Oklahoma State resume, and at the beginning of the year, they were not winning convincingly. But if you look at a team that has a win over Oklahoma, a win over Baylor, those are 2 top 10 wins. Top 10. And then you're talking about went on the road and beat Texas when they were in the polls, beat West Virginia, beat some decent teams week to week in the Big 12 conference. And that competition was tougher than what Cincinnati faced. I know there were a couple of teams, it's not Cincinnati's fault either, but Central Florida wasn't quite as good as they've been in recent years. Navy, not quite as good as they've been in recent years. And Cincinnati has the win over Notre Dame. I just think, and maybe I'll feel differently tomorrow, but I just think right now the overall resume, as much as I kind of hate it, would be a little bit better for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and the thing about Oklahoma State is, BJ, they beat Oklahoma, and it's a recency thing, right? Oklahoma has been coming on strong with a lot of momentum. Cincinnati, they've been beat Notre Dame, and nobody really gave them credit for when they beat them because it was surrounded by a lot of other teams having big wins. Oklahoma State is waving the flag right now for the Big 12. When you beat a team like Oklahoma, you're going to get a lot of fanfare. It's going to give you it's going to be about as good a resume booster as you're going to get. Now, I'm not saying that Cincinnati doesn't have a great win over Notre Dame, but they don't got that national appeal. I think this comes down to more than just who you beat and when you beat them, more than just how many losses or if you're undefeated. It's who you are. Cincinnati beat Notre Dame, but unfortunately, they are not Notre Dame. They are Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think the question that I struggle with is this. Who is in this scenario? And I understand you're talking about a one-loss versus an undefeated, but who is Cincinnati's second best win? I think it would be tomorrow against Houston. Who's their third best win? And I hate doing this, but I think that's the minutia you have to dive into in a situation like this.
The help around you is first going to come from not just who you play, but the conference in which they play in. Oklahoma is a usual suspect in the college football playoff. Oklahoma State came on strong. Oklahoma State beat them convincingly, and then now they're in the Big 12 championship game. It's going to be Oklahoma State, regardless if they do have a loss.
Yeah, I think if that scenario we just laid out happens, Cincinnati will be out, Oklahoma State would be in. And Ben, you guys know I've long said I don't believe if there's another way, like this will have to be the mode of last resort for them to put Cincinnati in there. Let's go to scenario number 2. Take 2. Cincinnati wins a close one. Oklahoma State loses. Is Cincinnati still in, or does Notre Dame sitting on the sidelines have a chance to hop over?
Yeah, and in that scenario, there's only one team between Cincinnati and Notre Dame in the playoff poll. It's Oklahoma State. So if Oklahoma State's out, some people have theorized, well, how would you compare an undefeated Cincinnati with the head-to-head over Notre Dame, and maybe a Notre Dame team with that being the only loss having a better week-to-week resume? I think that I would look at the head-to-head as being kind of doubly important, not only because you won, but you won at Notre Dame and you won by multiple scores. So it's not like, there was a crazy fluke ending. You controlled that game. They were leading by multiple scores for much of that game, and it was in South Bend. And I'm sorry, Notre Dame, on championship weekend, you watched. On championship weekend, you did not
And remember
play.
that supposedly plays a factor that
Right.
happened before when somebody sat back and didn't play a championship game.
You watched. And I have a hard time kind of knowing what to do with Notre Dame because Cincinnati this Saturday has a top 25 game. So not only will they have the head-to-head over you in your house by multiple scores, they will have played a ranked team on Saturday while you did nothing. So in that scenario, I feel very comfortable going with Cincinnati.
I'm going to go with Cincinnati, BJ, because the thing about Notre Dame is they got in before because they got beat by Clemson, who they beat in the regular season. They're not going to play Cincinnati again. But I will say this, though. Notre Dame got a lot of momentum right now, too, Kevin, with the coach leaving, getting the new coach. And, BJ, you always say this, too. Just because you beat a team, sometimes you could beat a team who was still better than you when you beat them. Now, I'm not saying that's the scenario this year, but the exception to the rule is two teams in college football, Alabama and Notre Dame. I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame jumped Cincinnati because they'll say, well, maybe they had a down game, what may have you. But I would put Cincinnati in. I mean, if they beat them head-to-head and they're undefeated, what else can they do?
Yeah, and BJ, I'm a big fan of what you do on the field. So in this scenario, I'm putting Cincinnati in. That's what I would do. I still think there'd be a lot of internal strife and pressure for them to leapfrog Notre Dame and get them in there. But I feel like Cincinnati would be in that scenario. All right, moving along. Final scenario, take 3 here. Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, all lose. Could happen. Who's in thusly after Georgia in that scenario?
That would be what, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all losing. I also hate this scenario because it gives you a set of circumstances where it's impossible to be consistent because you're going to have to violate some sort of idea of, well, this team didn't win the conference championship. This team beat this team head to head. This team only won, by modest margins. There's no good way to do it. I think if that happens, obviously it goes without saying Georgia's number one. As much as I don't like the fact that they watched on championship weekend, and I really don't like that, but I don't know what a better alternative is. I think Notre Dame comes in at 2. I mean, for the most part, they've handled their business. Outside of loss to Cincinnati, they've played better as of late down the stretch. I've made some marks on my paper because I've changed my mind since the show meeting. I think at 3, I would go Ohio State because if you look at Ohio State's losses, they lost to an Oregon team who spent much of the season in the top 5. And they lost to a Michigan team in the top 5. So both of their losses were top 5 losses. And if you want to go back to and I don't like this either, but we're talking about splitting hairs, the margin of victory evaluation, they have beaten a lot of teams by a lot of points. And I would lean Ohio State over Alabama. I'll have Alabama 4 because Alabama will have lost to the number 1 team in the country, which to me is barely even a loss. I mean, losing to the number 1 team in the country is kind of a half a loss. But you also look at Alabama and say, in a scenario where we're getting into the details, boy, you did not look good against Florida. You did not look good against Auburn. You did not look good against LSU. You did not look good against Arkansas. And you lost to a Texas A&M team that is kind of pretty good. I mean, for a while we thought Texas A&M was legit. They're good. They're not a great team. They're good. And where I struggle is with Michigan because Michigan beat Ohio State head-to-head, and their loss will be an extra loss that Michigan didn't have to play, that Ohio State didn't have to play. But the reason I would keep Michigan out is a loss to Iowa. Iowa's not a great team. They're a good team. And Michigan got blown out by Michigan State. So I think the margin of victory there. So I don't like this. I don't feel good about it. But I think I would go Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama.
I would go with Georgia, Notre Dame 1 and 2. BJ, I would switch 3 and 4. Strictly because something Kevin be saying, we don't want to see the rematch. You don't want to see Georgia, Alabama 1 and Georgia, Alabama 2.
But that's not supposed to be a factor.
Well,
It's
BJ,
not, but it is.
Yeah, and you know it is. And the thing is this. If you're going to get the rematch, you want to get the rematch in the national championship game, not in the semifinal game. So I would go, Georgia 1, Notre Dame 2, Alabama 3, Ohio State 4. And the thing about it is, once again, Cincinnati, man, wow, you talking about losing to Michigan. This comes down to big brand equity. This comes down to who people want to see. This will be the first time that a two-loss, SEC participant still made the college football playoff.
And a Big Ten team.
Yeah, Big Ten, because of who they are and who they play. So Ohio State, Alabama, because of y'all brand equity, even if Ohio State didn't play and Alabama lost to Georgia, they'll still get in. So yes, Georgia, Notre Dame, Alabama, Ohio State. They're not gonna put Alabama forward when we just seen that matchup 2 weeks prior.
Yeah, I still think that if this happens, this would be very interesting. And to me, I'll go with what Ben said. I was at least to start. I think Georgia obviously number 1. I think Notre Dame would be 2. Alabama would be 3, even with a loss, because as Ben said, you don't want to have the rematch. And I know BJ said, well, that's not what they're supposed to do. Well, under a scenario where we can manipulate what we want it to be, we will make it so that we don't have the rematch. Right? I mean, and we'll come up with some reasons why Alabama didn't move. I actually think Michigan, because they are 2 now, would slide back to 4, and Ohio State would still be out because Michigan would own the head-to-head, even with a loss in the Big Ten championship. And obviously, if Cincinnati loses, they're done. If Oklahoma State loses, they're done. So I think that would be my 4 if everybody, except for Georgia, that's up there, loses this weekend. And I think Michigan would be the one. Notre Dame would go up. Alabama would stay where they're at just to avoid the rematch. And Michigan would slide down to number 4 and play Georgia in the first round. If all of that comes to fruition. We'll get to our picks coming up later in the show. Sure to go wrong and see what we think about those likely scenarios out there as well. We'll come back. We'll talk Sun Belt Conference Championship, a big one there. Billy Napier's last game at Louisiana before he officially goes full-time to Florida. Adam Witten, voice of the App State Mountaineers, will join us. App State, boy, they have it over at Louisiana. They've won the Sun Belt Championship. He'll join us when we come back here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Again, this is obviously a repeat. We've seen this a couple of times already with App State and Louisiana. Of course, Billy Napier been in the news going to Florida. Does that just right off the hand? He is coaching for Louisiana in this game, but does that have any effect, do you think, on the outcome of the game on Saturday?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a good question, and certainly it's something that people are thinking about, but I don't think it's going to be a distraction. And the reason I say that is this team is trying to accomplish something that it's never done before. It's trying to win its very first outright conference title in this championship game. For as much winning as they've done under Billy Napier, this is still the thing that they've yet to achieve, which is beat App State in this championship game scenario. So while players and coaches on Billy's staff may be thinking, well, what's next after this game is over? I think they realize that they can start thinking about that on Sunday. And so right now, my guess is they're preparing as the same way that they would if Billy Napier was planning on staying in Louisiana next year. So certainly it'll affect their bowl game. It's a good question leading into their bowl game, but for this one, I don't really anticipate much happening in terms of distractions. If anything else, because of the way that they have supported Billy Napier in this move, they may be more motivated to win it just to be able to help him achieve that before he heads to Gainesville.
Adam, App State enters this game on a nice winning streak. What's the confidence level like around the Mountaineers?
They're super confident. You know, they're playing great football, and they still feel like, I think what makes them the most confident guys is that they don't feel like they've been able to put it all together just yet. They have had really dominant stretches of games, whether it's 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, but they have not all year been able to play a complete 4-quarter game. And so they realize there's still room to be even better. Now, they'll probably have to be able to put it all together in this game against Louisiana because this is going to be their toughest test. But I think their confidence comes from the fact that they're winning games comfortably. They're winning games in a lot of different ways, whether it's special teams or defense or offense. They are capable of making big-time plays and really impacting it in all 3 phases. But they know that there's still room for them to be even better. So I think that's encouraging and it makes them confident that they can take it to a level that's going to be needed to win this game.
Adam, obviously, this is the rematch. Louisiana had their way with App State the first time around. How much more does it make this game go up even higher when you got a team that's familiar with each other, with one team, you know, trying to get back, even though it is the championship game?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I think each team has a lot to prove in this game, and you can't always say that in a championship game where it's usually one team feels like they're being disrespected and motivated more than the other. For Louisiana, they've got to prove that they can beat App State in this type of game in a championship setting, whereas App State, even though they're the team that's won all the conference championship games, they feel like they've got something to prove just based on what happened in October when they lost by 4 touchdowns. So I think on both sides, each team feels like, yeah, nobody believes that we can win this game. For App, it's because of the way they were dominated in the game in October. For Louisiana, it's because they've never won a championship game against App State. So I think because of that, you've got a really unique scenario where both teams kind of look at this as a prove-it type of game.
Adam Witten, voice of the Appalachian State Mountaineers, joining us. And Adam, speak to App State and the way they're playing down the stretch. Obviously, Chase Price is transferred in, had a tremendous year for App State. Just where is this team offensively, where it seemed like after that loss to Louisiana, they really took off from an offensive standpoint?
Yeah, you know, I think for as great as the team has played in this 6-game winning streak, I think the offense is something that they really feel like needs to wake up a little bit. It's been inconsistent. The numbers haven't really been there. And, you know, in the game against Georgia Southern last Saturday, the offense did not run the ball well. Georgia Southern had a plan where they were going to put 9 in the box and put more people than they could block. And they said, you're going to have to hit us with the deep shots in man coverage to be able to move the football. And App was able to do that fairly consistently. They did hit on 2 big plays for touchdowns, but the defense and the special teams were really what lifted them in that one. So, you know, I think offensively, they've got to find a way to be able to run the ball. And part of that is being able to kind of use the pass to set up the run. App's usually been that way in reverse and use the run to set up the pass. But because of the way teams are really stack the box and load up to try to stop the run against App, they've got to be able to throw the ball downfield and mix it up with the way that they get rid of the ball out of Chase's hands. to be able to get that Louisiana defense to back off a little bit and open up some running lanes. So for as well as the team has played in this winning streak, I do still feel like that there are some things that need to improve on the offensive side of the ball. And it really starts with figuring out some ways to move the ball on the ground, because that has not been something that they've done at the level they're used to.
App State, since moving up to the FBS level, has been one of the most consistent winning programs in the country. For all the storylines around the Sun Belt, you know, what Coastal Carolina's done and Louisiana and kind of the national showcase games you've had, would it be a statement from Appalachian State if, with all the other storylines, all the other teams that have had success, you're talking about Appalachian State as the league champions once again?
Yeah, it's a good point, because I think this is a statement opportunity for the Mountaineers, because from the beginning of this year, they've kind of been thinking to themselves, well, wait a minute, like, we're the team that's been doing all the winning. We're the team that's won the titles. Why all of a sudden are people trying to get that thrown to other programs? And Coastal had an amazing year last year, and Louisiana has won so many games, and those two were ranked in the preseason top 25. And Louisiana is has won more games than App over the last couple of years. But Coastal Carolina kind of took a step back this year, and it's really tough to do this thing consistently. And so App got a chance to come out game and say, yeah, everyone was in love with Coastal, and everyone thinks that Louisiana is, ready to take the claim of the best team in this conference, and they're the one that's in the top 25 this week in the playoff rankings. So App's got a chance to say, well, wait a minute, we didn't go anywhere. We had a down year where we won 9 games in a COVID year, but here we are back on top, just like it used to be. So yeah, I think that's certainly one of the narratives to pay attention to inside that locker room.
And Adam, even sticking with that, I mean, every conference has a headliner. You're going to have, hopefully real good teams throughout it. You talk about Coastal, what they was able to do last year, what Louisiana's doing this year. But when I think of the Sun Belt, take nothing away from every other team, the first team that jumps out at me is App. Have they gotten used to being the headliners? And sometimes you get a little headliner fatigue, always being the hunted.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly embrace that, and it's something that they know that they kind of have to take with them wherever they go. That is the culture that is established from the first day that players step on campus. They know that the expectation and the goal every year is to win a conference championship, and so they've been to enough games on the road and in different scenarios where they know they're always going to get the team's best shot. They know they're always going to see something different. The thing that I always like watching for at the beginning of these games is, what are teams going to do that's different than what they've shown the last few weeks? Because they've got to try to do something to try to get App off balance and get out their early start. But then App usually able to adjust to it and win, the last 3 quarters of the last half of the ball game. So, yeah, I mean, it's certainly something they're used to. They have 14 super seniors on the team, 28 guys who are technically seniors on the team. So they've got tons of experience across this roster from guys that played in both the 2018 and 2019 championship games. And so, yeah, that is an important factor in this game, guys, that App has lots of people that have played in these types of games. They all played in this game in 2018 and 19 against Louisiana. So they know what's at stake here. They know what's coming up. They know what it takes to win a game like this. And so if they end up not winning this game, it's not going to be because they weren't ready for the moment.
Adam, finally wanted to ask you about a playmaker from down here in coastal Georgia, Trey Cobb. I believe earned some all Sun Belt honors. What type of season has he had for the Mountaineers, and how important is he going to be this weekend?
Oh, he's a tremendous player. Trey's been kind of a playmaker in terms of someone who's helped to force some big turnovers and make big plays in the game. He gets overshadowed a little bit because the inside linebacker, he's playing next to the defensive player of the year in the conference in DeMarco Jackson. But Trey's just as valuable. In fact, in his last 4 games, he's come up with 3 interceptions, 1 returned 100 yards for a touchdown. He's had a couple fumble recoveries. So Trey has been the guy who has really been able to, while his tackle numbers aren't always as high, he's always got his nose around the football, and he's recovering balls, he's forcing fumbles, he's getting interceptions. And so Trey is super valuable in his versatility to be able to not only make tackles and potentially be effective on the blitz up the middle, but be able to drop back in coverage and have good enough hands to make a good play on the ball. So Trey's an incredibly important part of this defense. He got second-team all-conference recognition just a day ago. So, yeah, he's going to be a huge factor in this game as well.
And it's App State and Louisiana coming up on Saturday for the Sun Belt Championship. Adam Witten, voice of Appalachia State, joining us here on 3 and Out. Adam, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, guys, appreciate it. Enjoy the game.
We'll do. Adam Witten joining us here on 3 and Out as, again, the Sun Belt Championship tomorrow afternoon, I believe, kicks off at the same time as the SEC championship game there as well. We've got more to come. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on 3 and Out on this Friday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you are with us. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. Got a nice little informal poll there on our Twitter page at Pigskin Radio. Who has the worst fake Southern accent? This is a reaction to Brian Kelly. A man, as BJ told me before the show, is from like the upper part of the country, right? Was he born in like New England area? Has been at, where else has he been? Central Michigan?
Yeah, right.
Central
right,
Michigan.
yeah.
He's been
Cincinnati.
He has not spent a lot of time where the summers are really, really hot. He goes to LSU and apparently within 24 hours has developed a new accent. This is him last night at the LSU basketball game. Play it, Cam.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this is a great way to get started. And I haven't even won all my games yet. It's a great night to be a Tiger. I'm here with my family, and we are so excited to be in the great state of Louisiana, but more importantly, to be with you great fans and to be part of what is going to be an incredible ride here at Louisiana State University.
Family. He came to LSU with his family. And he's like, come on.
Fake.
Come on. So that led us to believe, I wanted to throw that out there. What are the worst fake accents you have ever seen? What are some of the ones that you've seen, like movies, TV? You're like, that is the worst Southern accent probably ever.
I think the one that stands out for me, and we were all looking at lists online, is Nick Cage in Con Air is like really tough
Put
to deal
the bunny
with.
in the box.
Yeah, it's just like really tough. And you understand that you're trying to kind of over promote a personality or whatever you're trying to do. But that one
It was bad.
and to be fair, Con Air is not like a work of art. It's not like one of the great moments of theater, like in the history of American film. Like it's not, you don't think about that as being kind
You
of
knew that when Nicolas Cage was the star. You
well,
knew it wasn't going to be like.
but like Nick Cage in National Treasure, like that's a pretty good movie. That's fun. That's enjoyable. There's nothing kind of over the top. Nick Cage in Con Air, and wasn't he like from Georgia?
Yeah, he's not trying to play a hillbilly. He got, on a
It's-
prison transport.
It is rough. Like it is cringeworthy. That's got to be number one for me.
Oh man, I mean, Alec Baldwin and Goes to Mississippi. I mean, Keanu Reeves and Devil's Advocate. But for me, Terrence Howard and Hustle and Flow. I mean,
yeah, that is true.
Because the thing about Terrence Howard is, hey man, I'm trying to do this, man. What? And like, Anthony Anderson was, and listen, Anthony Anderson was actually trying to coach him while he's on the freaking thing when he was like, hey man, you messing up my flow, man. No, you messing up this accent. But I will say this, for people, there's the thing about Southern accents that people got to understand. It's like, it's not one size fits all. Like a Southern accent in Louisiana doesn't sound like a Southern accent in Mississippi. Doesn't sound like a Southern accent in Georgia. And people was thinking, oh man, why are they back? Because it might be the hardest thing to do. But hey, let me just go down here with these Southern. No, what part of the South are you from? So yes, for me, it's love you, Terrence Howard.
That is true.
Has some great movies, but all that, hey man, every other one, hey, I'm trying. No, man, don't do it anymore. Great movie, but I mean, it probably took a lot longer to do that movie. Like Terrence, what? I'm trying to give you all I got, man. Do you?
I feel like
That's awful.
Have you not seen that movie?
It-
Oh my God, Cam, have you seen that?
Hustle and
That
Flow.
accent. Go watch it, man. What Ben is doing is so funny because he's like, "Come on, man,
I mean,
I can't do it. You're doing it way better than
when
me."
he does, he like, hey man, we over here trying to make this CD,
if
man.
you're talking about
Yes,
one-liners,
because they at Memphis, right? They at Memphis, and he's trying to look. The thing about a Southern accent, you can't overstress it. It's, hey man, listen, we over here, and we trying to do this demo tape.
no,
We gonna
listen,
need y'all.
if you're talking
really,
about
you know.
one-liners, the worst one-liner in fake Southern accent history is James Vanderbeek in Varsity Blues.
Yeah, that's
I
bad.
don't want your life.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. The one that always drives me crazy, and I don't know why it does, but if you watch Bagger Vance, The Legend of Bagger Vance, like Charlize Theron's is awful. It's like so overdone.
She's overstressed. I mean, she's over. And the thing, once again, Matt Damon, he's trying to reel it back, saying, look, Southern accents, right? We're gonna say words that aren't words. I get it. But it's not drawn out. It's like,
Am I supposed to just sit here like a buttered muffin? And like, come on.
exactly. I mean,
That's what she says. It's awful.
Listen, if you really want to show us you can act, do them Southern accents. They're not.
Mr. Randolph Jr. from right here in Savannah,
Right,
Georgia.
Savannah,
It's
Georgia.
awful.
I
It's
mean,
the worst.
Now the little kid, he had it. He had it down.
I haven't
pat.
seen that either.
Oh, listen, the Legend of Back. And hold on. And this thing.
How have you not
Hold
seen that
on,
movie?
Hold on.
Has that been working?
Hold on. And this thing, Will Smith, he didn't do too much. Kept it simple. He'll say, he'll say Bag of Vans is the name. Like a 15 is guaranteed. He kept it simple, not all this. Hey man, I want to play some golf, man. I love Terrence Howard, but I'm like, dude, I would have been like, cut, Terrence, what's wrong with you? Trying to cut this tape, trying to get up in here, trying to make a little money for the rent. Can't do nothing. How about we get that? How about that mic become this mic? It was bad. It was bad. The acting, the writing was good, but when they said action, it was like they was like, dude, we got him cash. When they gave him the check, he got to do it. BJ, you're gonna have to watch Hustle and Flow. Good movie, man, but
Dang.
I'm just telling you.
Listen,
Listen,
Terrence Howard, great actor.
Ludacris in the movie.
Luda?
Yes, Ludacris. I'm trying to think of something you ain't never seen. I mean, Terrence Howard. What is something?
Terrence Howard was in Four Brothers. He was the he was the cop that
Yeah.
Okay, Terrence Howard might be they might typecast him. He don't have like range, and you ain't gonna say whoa. But if every other word is
like most of his movies, he plays a bad guy.
exactly like with that, he was like, I don't like bad cops. But at least he was himself in Four Brothers. With that, it was all right and action. Every time I get out this car, man, I can't do it. He did it he like, hey man, I just wanted to. It was bad. Because he was in Memphis. It was supposed to be. If you were from Memphis, you thinking, what? This was used to get a person from that city and typecast him in the movie and give him a shot. Because Terrence Howard, that ain't what he do. Love Terrence Howard, but that ain't it, ladies and gentlemen. That ain't gonna get
We were talking about this one too, and I understand. I guess it's so quotable that it stays with you. I understand that it's supposed to be over the top. I get it. But we were talking about The Water Boy. I mean, they're just with Adam Sandler. There are just so many. I get that's kind of the point.
Yeah, that's very shticky.
I mean, hold on, that was Louisiana, right? I mean, they
yeah.
I mean,
Mud
look,
Dog.
Look, I will say this. Listen, if you're not Southern, and
Don't do it.
And obviously, y'all think we have a certain. I'm gonna say this: a person who's lived up north, we think the way y'all talk is weird too. Y'all think, why you sound like that? Well, I mean, we say things like, it ain't you all, it is y'all. We fin to. You don't got to like it, but we use words that are words. Like a brick in the South is an object that people use either throw at you or they build houses with it. Up north, it means that it's cold outside. It's brick. Or, if you use the word mad in the South, that means you're angry. If you use the word mad up north, that means a lot of things. There's mad people outside. What you mean? I ain't seen nobody angry. No, it's a lot of people. So it's a lot of, but that Southern twang, I love it. BJ, I've been told I sound like I'm from a lot of places.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
What,
But
I mean, I understand that we talk slower from time to time, but it's just so exaggerated.
You just try to add extra vowels
I will say
and
this.
everything else.
It
to
depends on who you're around. If I'm around my family, it's probably hard for you to understand what I'm saying now. But I'll use words that ain't word. I'm like, boy, what are you talking about? That's just how we talk. But if you have lived in the South, you don't need no interpreter. But old Brian Kelly, try to get my family, my family.
I mean,
I should have came
tried to fit in, man.
I should have came out there and said, Brian Kelly, man, what you doing out here, man? Brian
my
Kelly,
family. We're excited to be here at Louisiana State University.
And then
it was rough.
I know somewhere his publicist is going, say family right. Oh my God, he blew it. He like, I got it right. You didn't. You and your pleats. You just killed it.
Just talk and
Yeah.
say it normal.
Your family.
It's fine.
Your family. My family. What?
We got more to come here on the show. It's 3 and out. We'll come back all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Friday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Some college football news out there. Obviously, we reported earlier this week, Sean Quinn resigned there at Savannah State University as the head football coach. Today, Savannah State announced that Russell DeMasi has been promoted to the interim head coach there. So someone we've known around Savannah State for a while, and he's going to be in the interim role until they name a replacement. Could be him, could be, who knows, depending on what the university decides to do, but he was named the interim head coach today by Savannah State.
Yeah, great coach. Will do a great job in that role. Will do a great job as full-time head coach of the Tigers, and knows football, passionate about football, played quarterback, of course, at Georgia Southern, and a Savannah native, I believe, went to Savannah Christian. Yeah, so really excited to see what Coach DeMasi can do. You have recruiting going on. I believe Coach DeMasi is the director of recruiting at Savannah State, so a lot going on, but very happy for him to have that opportunity.
Let's just call it what it is. Savannah State is a special place. You want people that love the university, that love those kids, that spend spend a lot of time in that community. I think Coach DeMasi, he checks off all those boxes. Obviously, OPO, the athlete, already got to go decide who's going to be the head coach. We hope that Coach DeMasi does become the head coach, but it's a special place. And you want a guy that understands X and O's, but also cares about and resonates with those student athletes, with those young men. I think Coach DeMasi, and not just him, but everybody on that staff does that. So you hope that those guys get a chance to go from interim, or DeMasi get to go from interim to head coach, but we will see. But at least for one game, Kevin, Christian right now, Kevin and BJ, I'm sorry, man. I think at the end of the day, you want to see people get their opportunities, man, and I wish you nothing but the best for Coach DeMasi.
Absolutely. And again, you're still in the realm of coaching changes. And I believe Clay Helton is looking for coordinators. Some news of coaching announcements out there for Clay Helton. I think has a tight ends coach apparently in the works. And we'll see an official announcement from the school upcoming about that. But he's looking for offensive and defensive coordinator. Georgia Tech looking for offensive and defensive coordinator. Savannah State looking for a head coach. So you got a lot of positions open right here in the state of Georgia. And, oh, by the way, Georgia fans, you don't want to rain on the championship weekend parade, but a lot of stories about Coach Monken and Coach Lanning being looked at as possible head coaching candidates. But when you're the only undefeated team in college football and you're putting up record numbers.
Whoa, Cincinnati.
When you're the only undefeated major college football team, major college football team there, your coordinators are going to obviously be looked at for other gigs as well.
Yeah, and it's amazing. We've seen so many hires, and we feel like we've been through kind of multiple seasons of hirings here, but you have 2 openings in the ACC. I mean, Duke is open. Virginia, as we found out yesterday, going to be open. You're thinking about Miami needs a new offensive coordinator. I think there were multiple media reports earlier today that apparently the Hurricanes are going to try to go after Mario Cristobal, the head coach at Oregon. We'll see how that goes. While they, I guess, still have a head coach in Manny Diaz. So I think we're in for a busy couple of weeks. I would guess, Ben, coaches not only want to be in place, but want to have their staffs. Think about Clay Helton or whoever. You want to have your staff in place as soon as possible, even if you're not looking at trying to sign most of your recruiting class in the early signing period. I mean, the regular signing period's 2 months away. I mean, so you want to get on recruiting as fast as you can, have a staff out and working as soon as you can. So I think we're going to see a lot of hires in the next couple of days.
The lifeblood of every program is recruiting. BJ and Kevin, I think we just witnessed the most exciting thing about any program is who's going to be your head coach. Either you got a guy that's guiding you in the right direction, or there's a guy out there. I mean, LSU is meant to take your coach with potentially $15 million a year for Brian Kelly. You look at what Lincoln Riley, BJ and Kevin meant for USC, but now you mentioned Duke. You mentioned Virginia. Think about Manny Diaz looking at Twitter saying, "What you mean Miami's looking for a head coach? I'm the head coach." They're like, "No, you were, because if they can get Cristobal, he's going to be there." But that's why we watch State of Georgia, offensive, defensive coordinators galore, Coach Monken, Coach Lanning. You're going to be a lot of guys get a chance to get opportunities. But once again, I hope Coach DeMasi goes from interim to head coach for the Savannah State Tigers.
And we will we'll see where they decide to go with that route as well. But again, championship weekend, we got our picks coming up in the next segment. Sure to go wrong.
Great.
Well, I mean, nothing to be worried about now. I mean, there's only so much ground to be made up at this point. You had all season, and I'd had all season to track down Cody. And of course, we find out, 13 weeks in, that Ben never actually officially submitted any picks. Christian just gave him the
Yeah,
favorite
we
every
did
week.
find out that you
and-
were basically given the chalk favorites every week.
Well, not every week. I did start off like giving picks, and when that didn't work, I just went chalk.
So it's just a new strategy.
it was just a simple request. Write down your picks
It's about
that you
going
give
chalk,
on the show.
man. Go chalk, man. You'll find yourself in second place right now. Because I did it for the family.
My fam.
I mean, it's amazing. Like all the
Going
jokes
viral.
in 24 hours, you developed a southern
Me and my
accent.
family. What?
Yeah, that's what happens when you give me $100 million.
Yeah.
I start talking about my
I mean, you look at the
family.
contract. All right, you got to do this. Got to develop a southern
Yeah.
accent. Got
Page 37, paragraph C, subsection Q. Develop a southern accent. Mention how much you love your family.
13 minus
And
50. 47.
We got so much more to get to here on the show. We'll give our picks. Sure to go wrong when we come back. Obviously, talking Georgia and Alabama SEC championship game coming up this weekend there in Atlanta. And certainly we'll see how that plays out. And obviously, Monday, we're going to have a lot to talk about no matter how it goes with the SEC championship, the Big 10, the Big 12, the
what about tonight?
and tonight, the Pac-12 championship. We'll get to all of that. We'll get our picks sure to go wrong when we come back. This is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Football tonight. Give me Utah in a take 2 butt kicking in this ball game tonight.
I will take Oregon. Nothing would surprise me. It's the Pac-12, and I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think we'll see a lot of points, but give me the Ducks to win the Pac-12.
This will be the last time BJ and Kevin will get a chance to see Mr. Kayvon Thibodeau in college football. This will be his last game. I think he's going to try to go out with a bang. I know it's going to be high scoring, but give me them Ducks led by Mr. Kayvon Thibodeau.
All right, Baylor is at Oklahoma. Or Baylor is taking on Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship. The Cowboys, a 5.5-point favorite. This is a rematch. Oklahoma State does have a win over Baylor already this season.
Yeah, and you're talking about a game where what? First one to 50, first one to 55. And this is one with college football playoff implications. Oklahoma State, if they win, there's a good chance they're in the playoff. But I think Baylor wins this game straight up, and I will certainly take them with the points. I think a little more balance potentially. And I like the fact in a weird way that they've already lost to Oklahoma State because it's hard to beat a team twice. Normally, when you see that happen, the rematch favors the team that lost, assuming they're kind of comparable in terms of what type of team they are. So I will take Baylor, a mild upset, and I think you have a lot of people around the country wanting Baylor to win this game as well.
Listen, Oklahoma State is a team that definitely got over a hump being able to beat Oklahoma, but it's hard to beat a team twice, especially a familiar foe. Baylor tends to want to play the spoiler late in seasons. They usually beat Oklahoma in the regular season. This year, it was Oklahoma State that got the dub against them. Soon as give me Baylor with the upset against them.
Yeah, if you want some chaos, you want to secure Cincinnati's spot, you want Baylor to win. I'm going to go Oklahoma State here in this one, laying the 5.5. I think Mike Gundy's team better than you guys think they are. I think they get in and get a win with the Big 12 championship. App State at number 24, Louisiana. Billy Napier's final game there at Louisiana before he's 100% all in with the Florida Gators. Louisiana, a 3-point favorite.
And I think we know who Ben's going to pick here. Going to be a great game. Two really good teams that have been in and out of the top 25. I think Louisiana's right there in the 20s, and I think you have a lot of emotion at play here with Billy Napier. And I've been impressed that he wanted to come back and be a part of this. That it was important to him to finish this season to win a championship. App State lost by multiple scores in the first meeting. Now, I know I just said it's tough to beat a team twice, but that was a really lopsided contest. And you're talking about this game being in Lafayette. I think that's a big advantage potentially for Louisiana. Close, that line makes me nervous, but I think there's a real emotional aspect to this game with Billy Napier. I will take Louisiana to win and cover, but I think this is going to be a great football game.
Listen, loyalty and doing things the right way is not something you're going to hear me talk about a lot when it comes to college football or college sports in general. The thing about Billy Napier, he did it the right way. Obviously, he's going to the University of Florida right after this game, tomorrow. But I think when you got a coach that his team loves him, not plays for him, they love playing for him. They want to send him out, on their shoulders with a Sun Belt championship, giving them Raging Cajuns to get that big dub against the Mountaineers.
Yeah, and this is one that's at a home site, not a neutral site for the Sun Belt Championship game. Give me Louisiana laying the 3 at home here in the championship. Houston at Cincinnati. A lot of folks watching this. No margin for Cincinnati. They lose, they're no question going to be out. They are a 10.5-point favorite in this ball game, though, knowing if they win, I shouldn't even say that. If they win, they still got a chance. How about that?
Yeah, this one makes me nervous for a couple of reasons. One, we've basically been saying for a month now, Cincinnati, are they going to get in? They're going to go undefeated. Are they going to get in? And that's a hard kind of environment psychologically to play in. I mean, Houston's nationally ranked. They're a good team. A part of me feels like this is going to be a game where maybe Houston comes out early and puts a couple of touchdowns up on the board and Cincinnati has to respond. I think Cincinnati finds a way to win. But what was the line? 10, 11 points? 10.5. I will take Houston to cover. I think this is going to be a closer game than people think. Cincinnati wins straight up. But I think the pressure, the spotlight of championship week, maintaining that edge week to week to week for Cincinnati, I think it's a little closer game. I'll take Houston with the points.
I mean, BJ and Kevin, I do think Houston comes out and give a valiant effort. I think they're going to go out there and play some big-time football. But Cincinnati, they battle-tested. They battle-ready. They know that the whole world, it's them versus the world, really. Kevin, I know we always say, it's a disrespect card. We beaten Notre Dame. No one cares. We finally made it in the top 4. We control what we can control by going out there and winning that game. Give me them Cincinnati boys with that dub.
Yeah, this is weird because part of me feels like this is the game where all the naysayers go, see, they didn't deserve to be there. I will take Cincinnati laying the 10 And I still don't know if he'll get it or not, but it will be intriguing to watch when it's all said and done. Number 2, Michigan, laying 11 against Iowa, who's ranked number 13 there in the Big Ten championship game.
That spread makes me nervous. Two really good teams defensively and running the football. And if you go back to the win for Michigan over Ohio State, they ran the football with authority. A young man had 5 rushing touchdowns, but the passing numbers were still really modest. And I think maybe you have a little bit of that post-euphoria letdown for Michigan where, our season's saved. We beat Ohio State. And the whole time Iowa's looking around going, okay, you have us coming up. I think Michigan wins. I think it is tight and low scoring. I will take Michigan straight up, but can you have 2 great performances back to back? I will take Iowa really good defensively to cover.
Oh my God, it's one of those Big Ten. I mean, watch a paint dry. Oh my God, somebody just try to get a first down, just throwing out, punt, a field position game. But BJ and Kevin, listen, Michigan did something. Harbaugh did something I didn't think I would ever see him do as a head coach. Finally got over the hump with Ohio State. You can go, breathe a little, breath of fresh air. But I do think Michigan does win, but I think it's a scary win. I think Iowa takes them down to the wire because Iowa been playing the spoiler all year in this Big Ten. But I think Michigan finally gets that Big Ten championship.
Yeah, this feels like Wisconsin, Penn State Part 2, where it's like 3-3 or something at halftime. I will say, I will say Iowa plus 11. I don't think Iowa's going to win, but I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game, and that 11 points seems like a lot. Pitt -3 against Wake Forest, ACC championship game, number 15 against number 16.
Let's do it. And you're talking about a game where a lot of points are going to be scored. This one might have more points than the Big 12 championship game with the 2 offenses, Sam Hartman with Wake Forest, Kenny Pickett, of course, with Pittsburgh, 2 of the better offenses, not only in the ACC, but in all of college football. End of the day, I think there's a little more balance with Pitt. I think they're a little better defensively, and I don't know how much we're going to see defensively from either team, but I think they're a little better, a little more apt to be able to play in different circumstances. If you need, to grind out a drive maybe, or you need a defensive stand close, I will take Pitt to win the ACC.
It's a battle of respect. Come Saturday, obviously, Wake Forest, they weren't the usual suspects all year long. People saying, when is Wake Forest going to lose this? And they was waving the flag for the ACC, Mr. Kenny Pickett. I mean, BJ, you talk about breaking records. I mean, what he's done, and we didn't even get into that Pitt legacy, what type of players they've had. But I do think Pitt comes out with the win, but I do think Wake Forest makes it a 4-quarter game, but giving them Pitt boys.
Yeah, I think Pitt wins. They have the better defense, and Pat Narduzzi has done a tremendous job there at Pitt. They've got a great quarterback who's going to have a good day against that Wake defense. I don't know that Wake can get enough stops to stay in it. Give me Pitt laying the 3. And finally, fellas, Georgia -6.5 in Alabama from Atlanta, 1 versus 3.
Can't wait. This is going to be one of the games of the college football season. So many questions to answer, so many storylines at play. If I'm Georgia, some of the narratives make me nervous. Alabama's going to have this and this happen to even have a chance. Georgia's the clear, overwhelming, obvious favorite. Alabama's played below average in their last 3 or 4 SEC games. I think a market correction is coming. I think Alabama's going to win. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be compelling, but it's kind of like, Kevin, I remember years ago when I was listening to you on the radio and you were talking about the Braves. No, but you used to say, I got to see it before I can pick it. Like if somebody else is going to win the division, I have to see it before I can pick it. Of course, Georgia's capable. Of course, Georgia could win by multiple scores, but I think there's something that makes me nervous about the lead up to this game, just in terms of how everybody's saying, yeah, Alabama's done. Give me maybe Alabama by a field goal.
When we talk about how great Georgia is, let's just call it what it is. We talk about the front 7, and we talk about complementary offense. We talk about Stetson Bennett being one of the best stories, if not the best story in college football. We're talking about an offense that's led by a guy named Stetson and a guy named Brock. They're not doing the running the football. Georgia has the best defense. Alabama has the best defensive player. Georgia has a good offense, and I think Alabama has the best offensive player in Bryce Young. I do agree with something BJ said. Doesn't matter what you've done up to this point. When they standing in front of you, it's different. I think Georgia going to have a great game. I think Alabama going to have a great game. But Nick Saban's going to show Kirby Smart why it's hard getting us off this mountain. I don't care what we've done until this point. So I do think it's going to be a great game. I do think Alabama comes out with the win, and I don't think Alabama's the better team. I think Alabama's been here longer. Bryce Young comes up with a big drive. So give me Alabama and a nail biter to get that big dub against them Bulldogs.
Wow. I don't have a good reason one way or another for who I'm going to pick, other than to say I've picked Georgia with the points every single week, and they're 12-0. Not going to start. Not going to stop now. It feels like this is a Georgia team that is on a run of destiny. They have a chance to eliminate Alabama from the playoffs, as well as beat them in an SEC championship game.
Right.
And a big moment, big milestone for Kirby Smart in the program. I think they get it done. And if they do that, and you look at potentially who could be left in the playoffs, they may not play a harder game the rest of the way than what they will play on Saturday.
Are you laying the points?
Yeah, I'm laying the point. I'm taking Georgia minus 6.5. So there you go. Our picks. You can go to espncoastal.com and see how everybody picked this week, as well as the season-long standings there off the show. Oh, we didn't get to one, just ran out of time. But, I mean, we all know Valdosta State going to go on to the semifinals in the D2 playoffs this week. So just want to throw that out there as well. In my best Ed Ogeron, go Blazes there.
And for everybody who always got something to say about me picking the Florida Gators, there was a theme going on with Kevin picks Valdosta State, but I'm going to leave that for another show.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. There's our picks. Sure to go wrong. Coming right back. More to come. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Bye.